Welcome to San Antonio's Influence Magazine show, the premier talk show where we introduce you to influential individuals doing significant work in the city of San Antonio and surrounding areas. Celebrate the spirit of business, leadership, and innovation. If this is your first time joining us and you'd like more information, you could find us at influencesa.com. That's influencesa.com. Like us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Pinterest, and for this particular episode of the show, all future and past episodes of the show, pull up your YouTube search bar, toss in San Antonio's Influence Magazine show. That word is critical. Get that word in there. When you get there, please subscribe, give us a like or a thumbs up, and hit that bell so that you don't miss any future episodes of the show. Welcome to the show. 8 years ago, we were the first magazine to have a sit-down conversation with newly elected San Antonio Mayor Ron Nirenberg. This guy. 8 years later, we're back to have a conversation with the mayor as he exits office. Stay tuned after this break. When we return, we'll talk to the mayor about his past, present, and future. Ron, welcome to the show.
Great to be with you.
Good to see you again. And
it's been a while.
Of course, I'm very familiar with your background. Most people who are watching this show are, but for those very few who don't know about you, tell us a little bit about your background, where you're from, and how you got to San Antonio, and the rest of the story. Sure.
Well, I've been a Texan for 44 of my 47 years. We moved to Austin, Texas when I was 3 years old from Boston, Massachusetts, where most of my extended family still is. And I didn't make my way to San Antonio until I finished high school, and it was to pursue higher education. Unexpectedly found myself at Trinity University, and within 4 years of being there, had fallen in love with the city. I continued to pursue my education, which took me to Philadelphia. For graduate school, and when I was there, I met and fell in love with a woman named Erica, who got a job here in San Antonio, which I couldn't wait to get back to, so I followed her back here, and we've been here ever since 2000, and have really set our roots here. This is the city that has, that we've set our roots in. I worked in public policy research for a decade for the Nirenberg Public Policy Center, working in cities all across the country on civic engagement initiatives and municipal policy research. I've done various, community service and volunteer efforts. I've also worked in broadcast at Trinity University. I ran the radio station there and also taught in the communications department. I've been a small business owner and done consulting work, but in all of the work I've done, what I'm most passionate about is what I found myself doing here in San Antonio, which is devoting my time to making the city a place that other people would want to fall in love with, namely my own son, Jonah, who's now 16, and his generation as well. And I've really found a calling in public service and have been honored and privileged to be mayor for the last 8 years and a city council member before that.
We recall that and remember that too. Very good. You've got tons of accomplishments in the tenure you've been mayor, but what would be your most significant one?
Well, I think the most significant and most meaningful are the ones that are very long-term in nature. I've always taken the approach that my job is to ensure that the city is better off than when I found it. And the real challenges of San Antonio lay at the foundations of our city's economy. The fact that we have as exemplified during the pandemic, we have built an economy across this nation in which there are people who are still struggling desperately while we are experiencing incredible prosperity and economic development. And so for us to build a city that is sustainable, that in which that any family has the opportunity to thrive, it really requires us to build an inclusive city, restoring economic mobility across the board. So I'm proud that we have done that here in the city of San Antonio, built a foundation for our economy that we can sustain long-term economic growth and prosperity, but in a more inclusive manner, creating pathways to education and economic mobility through education and workforce development. We are building our first ever mass transit system in the city of San Antonio to improve public transportation, which happens to be a great barrier to people in terms of their own upward mobility. If they can't afford a car, it's very likely that they're also struggling with other things in their lives. And then ensuring that at the very basic level, we have a healthy housing system in San Antonio. Every city in the country is struggling with a housing crisis. We have a lack of available, affordable housing for people of all income levels. And so San Antonio, since I became mayor, we have developed a comprehensive plan for that, a model plan that our community's voters have supported it, that we've changed the city charter to allow us to bond for it. And we're in the midst of a strategic housing implementation plan that has created a healthy, affordable housing market in San Antonio, a healthy housing market for all incomes. Obviously, it's a work in progress. We still have challenges, but we're ahead of the game here in San Antonio.
Outstanding. Mass transit, that was one of the questions I had for you. So unpack that. Can you kind of give us a little peek at what that might look like?
Sure. Well, San Antonio is a sprawling city. Over the last, we're a 300-year-old city, and in particular, after, suburban flight out of the urban core, the city has grown its geographic boundaries, and we're a city where people quite often don't live near where they work. And it's especially difficult for people who depend on public transportation to get around town. You have to have a car to have efficient transportation here. So we want to provide options for people. It's long been a dream of San Antonio. We have had a public transportation system, a bus system that has been woefully underfunded. And so in November of 2020, I asked voters to consider reallocating an existing sales tax after it went to workforce development to permanently funding via public transit, so they can develop a mass transit system, the backbone of which would go north-south roughly along the San Pedro corridor from the airport to downtown, but extending as far north as Stone Oak and all the way down to Brook City Base, and then east-west along the Commerce Street corridor. That would provide the backbone of a mass transit system that we can continue to build on, and that thankfully has been funded. We have federal transit money helping us build that for the first time ever, and we'll be shovels in the ground building that system by the springtime.
Congratulations on that. I know that's always been a big need in the city here, and you're right, it's grown so incredibly since you've been mayor.
And the road to getting mass transit in San Antonio is littered with unfulfilled dreams and failures at the ballot box. So it says a lot about the work over the last several years and the trust in what we're doing to build a strong economy for everyone, that voters have approved it resoundingly in November of 2020.
Let's go back to we interviewed you when you first took office way back in 2017.
I remember the wood paneled walls downstairs, yeah.
What a memory. That's fantastic. So if you kind of look in retrospect now and think about some of the challenges that you've faced as mayor, did you underestimate some of the challenges or the job at all, or how do you feel about that?
I wouldn't say underestimate. I am confident in telling you that the agenda I just described to you in terms of economic mobility and inclusive prosperity is exactly what I campaigned on to get this job, and why voters believed in the message I was giving, because they wanted me to do this work. What we didn't anticipate is life, often getting in the way of best laid plans. We have been through some extraordinary crises as a city, not the least of which was the worst health pandemic in our lifetimes. We've been through a extreme weather event that basically shut down the entire state of Texas. We've been through civil unrest. We've been through a lot of difficult challenges as a community, but we have powered through because we work together. I am very thankful to have an incredible team to work with in my office and across this city organization that has been devoted to moving this work forward, but also to weathering those storms and getting our community through them as best we can. And we've done that, but it has been an extraordinary time, not just for San Antonio, for every city in the country. I talk to my fellow mayors, my peers all the time, and this has been an 8-10 year period that we've seen some of the worst challenges and adversities that mayors have experienced in America's history. And we have relied on each other, taking good ideas from each other, being there to support one another, and just people to lean on that are experiencing similar things. But, I would say in all of that, mayors have risen to the challenge, but also mayors have seen San Antonio, what we've been able to accomplish, and have modeled some of the things that we've been doing in their own communities.
2 terms as mayor. So if you had to look back at something you may have done differently, what might that have been?
Well, it's 4 terms. They're going to be 2-year terms. I mean, they're 2-year terms now, but they're going to go to 4-year terms.
4-year terms, right. I got that wrong.
No. But that's the way it's going to be now, which I think I'm proud to say we got that done, because that will allow some continuity of leadership and vision. I think it's going to be a good thing for our city. But your question is, what did I not get to?
What might you have done differently?
Well,
kind of looking back.
There's a lot of lessons learned. Every day we're facing something different. No 2 days are the same. And, a lot of times we're thrust into uncharted territory and having to do things, overcome adversity for which there is no playbook. I could give you a whole list of things that we have learned, we've improved from when the pandemic began to when it ended. I think, one of the lessons learned is that when you demonstrate public support for a broad and comprehensive agenda like what I've described to you and what I campaign on, what we're accomplishing now, you can overcome just about anything the world and politics will throw at you if you're staying true to the vision and you're always checking in with the voters. Housing, transportation, Ready to Work, which is our workforce initiative, even the airport project. All of those things, in one way, shape, or form, has been approved by voters because we've asked them, we've gone to them, we've done community convenings to work on plans for all of these things together. So the community has taken ownership of the agenda that I'm working towards as mayor. When you do that, there's political discussions, there's challenges, there's pandemics occasionally that come up, but you can overcome all of those things if you have the community by our side. So one of the chief lessons about being in this office in San Antonio is that we have an extraordinary hidden strength as a community, and that is this is a collaborative city. We like to work across sectors, across political aisles. We solve problems together, we rally around each other, and we can achieve almost any dream that we set ourselves out to because of the nature of this city. It requires leadership to recognize that and continue to foster that community engagement, but when we do that, this city can be one of the best cities in the world.
We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with Mayor Nirenberg.
We are always trying to fix something, but we must start with forgiving. We must begin to open our hearts and follow God. We also must learn to forget, because if you don't forget, then you haven't forgiven.
Presented by Cedric D. Fisher and Company Publishers. What if the path to healing your deepest wounds began with a single, powerful choice? To forgive. In the blessings of forgiveness, Blaise LaBaye takes us on an extraordinary journey From the struggles of a childhood marked by colorism, racism, and family secrets, to finding hope, redemption, and the courage to heal. Blaze's story is one of resilience, of rising above the pain of a fractured family and systemic prejudice. His journey takes him from a small Louisiana neighborhood to the heights of success as a journalist and leader, but it's the lessons learned along the way that define him. Blaze discovered that forgiveness was not just a gift to others, but a pathway to his own freedom. This memoir is a message of hope for anyone seeking healing from their own struggles. Blaze's reflections on race, faith, and the enduring power of love remind us all that the hardest roads often lead to the most beautiful destinations. The Blessings of Forgiveness by Blaze Labe, available now wherever books are sold.
So let's talk about public safety and law enforcement. Did you have any real strategies when you came in about how to address those two topics? And how do you feel about where things are today?
Yeah, well, public safety, and specifically as it relates to crime, are never in a satisfactory place. Simply because if there is one crime happening in San Antonio, that's one too many. You can never tell a victim of crime, hey, we're doing better, look at the statistics, because that's not going to change the experience that they've had. So it's always going to be a work in progress. When I took office as mayor, we were experiencing a huge uptick in violent crime. We got that under control pretty significantly, and then all of a sudden the pandemic hit, and there was tremendous amount of isolation, and in the aftermath of that, there's a lot of mental health challenges that we're experiencing, and we saw a huge spike in violent crime like every city in America did. But what I'm happy about is that the method in which we've tackled these issues is by working with community, by really kind of getting granular into the data and trying to identify ways that we can disrupt the violence at its core. And we're also getting smarter about the way we're policing. So, we don't necessarily need a traditional police response to every mental health crisis. If we can get someone into a mental health protocol when they're just really in desperate need of that kind of intervention, as opposed to just the traditional policing, that can lead to better outcomes for the entire community. We've been able to do that. We've now seen precipitous decline in our violent crime rates. We're actually also seeing a decline in property crime as well. In addition to that, we've taken a microgrid strategy. So we look at specific areas of town. We've done data analysis in partnership with UTSA. I talk about the fact that we don't prevent crime with our police budget. We respond to crime with police budget. Everything else we do as a city to create a healthy city is how we prevent crime. You want to prevent crime, give people a good job. And so we've been able to do those kinds of investments. We're looking at the data in places that have high crime and looking at, maybe there's some infrastructure investments we need to make. Maybe there's some, after-school programming we need to do. And we've been able to start working on those kinds of interventions upstream from emergency and crime response. And we're starting to see those decline as well. So I think we have an approach to crime that is smarter, that is allowing us to respond to some of the challenges that come up, and as a result, we're seeing those in the statistics as well.
One of the topics or the issues, challenges, if you will, that just about every major city has, and we're up there, if you want to call it a big city.
Yeah, we are.
At least by population, right? Is homelessness.
Yeah.
So what's your take on that, and how has maybe that improved? Or
Yeah, homelessness is an extraordinary challenge, and it was a epidemic here in San Antonio before Mayor Hardberger and Bill Greehey and the community got together and created what we now know as Haven for Hope, which is the center of gravity for a homeless response system. Since then, our homeless population has remained roughly the same, and it's not the same people. Chronic homelessness, the people that are unsheltered, some of the folks there have been on the street for a long time. But homelessness occurs because people have economic catastrophe. They aren't able to maintain a roof over their heads, and sometimes they find themselves without a house, without a home. So we want to have services to provide and to get people into shelter so we can get them to start standing on their feet, getting back into sustainable employment, et cetera. So over time, we've learned that there's gaps in that service spectrum. So in this housing bond that we just passed, we're now creating permanent supportive housing, which is housing that's available for folks that has services attached that will help them get restitution, rehabilitation, et cetera. We're getting folks off the street who don't have homes so they can start working on being permanently off the street. We've done that by identifying those gaps, and I'll tell you it's working. Even though our homeless population, even though our population has greatly increased over the last 20 years, our homeless population has declined slightly over time. And more significantly than that, though, the unsheltered population of homelessness has declined precipitously. When people see homelessness numbers, people need to know there's different kinds. We count among our homeless population people that are in shelter, in permanent supportive housing, in low barrier shelter. They actually are not out on the street. They have services, and we're working on permanently getting them out of homelessness. San Antonio has the lowest rate. People need to know this. San Antonio has the lowest rate of major cities in Texas for unsheltered homelessness. In fact, 73% of our homeless population is in shelter, not on the street, has the services available to them to start working to get permanently out of that situation back in a sustainable, stable place.
73%.
73%.
Yeah, we haven't heard that.
No, so we do an annual point in time count, which is the census, and our numbers have roughly stayed the same, and they've declined a little bit. But what we don't really dig into, and what when you hear numbers from other cities and you hear there's rankings from these online publications, you see just the raw numbers. But what you need to know is that we have services now, and we have shelter services available for folks to get them off the street, but also to work to get them permanently into their own homes, into jobs to help them sustain themselves. And as a result, our homeless population, unsheltered, is the lowest amongst big cities in the state of Texas.
It's good. That's very good. You were mayor during the pandemic.
Yeah.
And what were some of the challenges that we faced here in San Antonio, and how did you overcome them?
The biggest challenge during the pandemic was the fact that there was really no playbook, and there was a tremendous amount of uncertainty and fear, a lack of knowledge about how this virus would, start to be transmitted throughout our community. It was a novel virus. That's why they didn't have much information about it. It was novel. So we had to kind of work on how do we protect our community in the midst of all of this chaos? And oh, by the way, the federal government's response was nil. It was chaos, similar to what we're seeing today play out. There was really we weren't tethered to a central response. So here in the city, the judge and I decided very early on that we've got to be a united front. We've got to get information out to people. We've got to communicate to folks what we knew, what we didn't know, how to protect themselves. We've got to work to restore some trust and put health officials out front so that they had some confidence that we've got the best people working on this. As a result, obviously we were briefing the community every single day. We were able to build a level of trust that allowed us to work through the pandemic in a way that saved lives, that allowed us to, be aggressive in stopping the spread and preventing vulnerable from communities, people with health conditions that would make them extremely vulnerable to fatal outcomes. We were able to save a lot of lives and, get through it in a way that, allowed us to make mistakes, but get over those and improve the response over time. San Antonio's response has been noted as an exemplar in the way that we were able to protect the public health and get back to being open and vibrant and economically strong as quickly as possible.
When you look back at your accomplishments over your 10 years as mayor, have you left anything undone? Is there anything unfinished that you would have liked to maybe have completed?
All of it.
All of it.
Yeah, and that's the nature of the work. As I mentioned before, the important stuff that we do, the meaningful work in offices like this, is not one where we get to start everything and end it. You know, I have taken the philosophy that I am handed the baton from my predecessor, and I will hand it off to my successor. The work that we get to do in these times, in this time that I've had the honor to serve and been entrusted with this office, is to try to get us as far down the field as possible in this pursuit of progress. And I've told you what that agenda is. You know, a healthy housing market where, you know, everyone has the opportunity to afford a safe place to call home, an opportunity to get a good job with a good wage, a way to get around the city that, you know, doesn't break the bank. All those things are works in progress, and all those things are going to be things that we have to work on as we continue to move forward into the future. So I'm proud that we have set that agenda in place, and we've got it in motion. We've created an incredible and a positive inflection point for the city, and I will leave it moving in that direction. I am hopeful that voters will continue to support what they have supported in the past, namely the progress in this direction, and then our next set of city leaders will keep the progress going and hopefully accelerate it.
We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
No strategy. Wasting time. Opportunities passing by. Fear holding you back. Your dream career isn't out of reach. The right steps will get you there.
I know what it's like to feel lost or even scared in your career development. Even when I first started working with top television networks and celebrities and on red carpets, I was still scared and had frustration because I found that my core values were not in alignment with my career path. I learned how to get that dream career, and I can show you how to do it too.
Introducing the Dream Career 4-part video series. A clear step-by-step plan, your path to success. Part 1, Research and Reflection Purposes. Part 2, Building a Roadmap to Success. Part 3, Overcoming Challenges and Building Resilience. Part 4, Creating Balance and Fulfillment. Success isn't luck, it's strategy. It's action. It's your time. Get the Design the Dream Life that you want with your dream career for free. Tap the link below or scan the QR code to get access. Your dream career is waiting. Let's make it happen.
How did you prioritize the various needs of the diverse population in San Antonio here? We've got a very diverse city.
That's a great question, and I think that question is the essential one for every public representative, to be candid. How do you take a community, whether it's a district or a city, and identify a common set of priorities, you know, amidst a diverse community that has different aspirations, different challenges, et cetera? I mean, my first campaign, the motto was meet your neighbor, be a better neighbor. And the point of that was, as I walked through all those thousands of doors in District 8, which is an incredibly diverse district, everybody I met had a different story, had a different, you know, political belief system, you know, different background, different aspirations and challenges that they experience, and different, you know, family commitments. And so we had to figure out, how do we govern and how do we utilize the public resources in a way that met their needs and found the common cause forward. That's the same for the city. It's incredibly diverse city, as you know, demographically, religiously, politically, you name it, it's a diverse city. What we have done in the city of San Antonio, started kind of day one when I became mayor, is we established what I've referred to as the equity agenda. Essentially, it is taking a look at the city, understanding the data, the history of the city, the investments we've made over time, and identifying where our resources can be, where our resources are needed the most when it comes to, you know, street and sidewalk infrastructure, when it comes to, you know, library services, animal care services. We have gone about when we make priorities related to the public resources of the city, they're scarce public resources, we use an approach to equity, meaning that we place the resources where they're needed the most. And any department, any operation that we're doing, we look at it that way. I don't know if that answers your question.
Okay, sure, absolutely. So how are we doing with race relations? Just let's talk about that.
In general?
In general.
I think if the world operated like San Antonio, we'd be in a whole lot better shape. San Antonio is a confluence of culture. That is our history as a city.
Sure.
We've experienced a lot of challenges. In fact, we've been the site of a lot of the roots of our ongoing march to justice and civil rights and human rights and immigrant rights and labor rights. A lot of those movements either started here or came through here in San Antonio. And I think that's in large part because cultures and peoples have made San Antonio home from many disparate places. So over time, we have learned to figure that out as a community and bridge differences, appreciate differences, and start to work towards common cause together. That's the nature of San Antonio, why we are so collaborative. So I would say race relations in San Antonio are generally positive. And in fact, in this era of political division and a rise in racism, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, there is a statistical rise over the last 6 to 10 years, and it's mirrored in our politics. While that has happened, we've seen a statistical decrease in hate crimes and hate incidents in San Antonio. While other cities around San Antonio have seen increases in hate crimes, we've seen them go down. And I think it's in part because San Antonians, again, their ethos is we find common cause amongst all of our differences, but we also don't tolerate hate in our community. We stand against it. We always will. When people are marginalized, we stand up for them. That's the San Antonio way.
So race relations have improved during your tenure here, please?
It's hard to say improved simply because of the toxic environment that we live in politics these days. But I would say San Antonio stands in a strong position of community collaboration and harmony, and race relations go along with that, despite what we're seeing outside in our political space.
Let me ask you a simple question or a softer question. So
Sure.
We get the privilege of interviewing a lot of great leaders in the city, and one of the common things we've found about most leaders is they're all readers. All leaders are readers.
Yeah.
And their go-to book is typically on their nightstand. What book's on your nightstand?
So I have a few books. One of them is Kara Swisher's Burn Book, and which is a great read, particularly in this political environment that we're in, because it talks about her history with all of the tech bros who now find themselves in politics. It's pretty insightful. It's in some ways disturbing, but I would encourage people to read that book.
And it's called?
Burn Book.
Burn Book. Burn
Yeah.
Book, okay. Burn Book, okay. We'll have to look that up.
She is a reporter, columnist, journalist extraordinaire, worked for several different major publications, including the New York Times, I believe the Wall Street Journal, covered technology covered the tech explosion that's occurred twice in the late 90s and again in the 2000s. But all of those characters who now run major companies and in some cases major quasi-governmental agencies are in this book.
Last question. Of course, all our viewers want to know what's next for Ron Nirenberg. So what do you see down the road? What are you going to do next?
So first, what I see down the road is what's still in front of me, and that is every minute of my tenure is going to be spent at full intensity. So I've got a lot of work to do, and I'm going to do it all the way to the whistle blows, likely on June 16th. After that, I believe I'm going to continue to be looking for places I can have impact and solve problems, and in our political space, we need more common sense, pragmatic problem solving, and less of the divisive political rhetoric that we've seen. So I'm not sure yet, but I do not think that this is the last you've heard of me in public service. I'm really looking at this as the end of Act One.
Absolutely. Will we find you still in San Antonio, or?
Yeah, San Antonio is home. I knew it the moment I, left Trinity, that this was my home.
This is your home.
And
so if you get a call from D.C. or somewhere else.
Yeah, so I don't know. Obviously, there was a lot of speculation about that. I don't think that's going to happen in the next, certainly for the near term. But San Antonio will always be home base. I don't know what the future holds, but San Antonio will be home.
Yeah. Okay. Ron, we appreciate you coming on the show.
Thanks,
Very good
Cedric.
to see you.
Good to see you too.
In your future.
Great to be back with you.
We'll see you all next time.